Wayne, obviously not a ton of upsets, but clearly we do have some changes today with the Kansas injury news. Can you give us an update?
Yes, let's go. Let's get right to it. Yeah, you hit it right on the head, Michella. The big news, of course, is Kevin McCullough, who's the leading scorer for KU, is out for the tournament. You can see right now that's kind of big news of the day in terms of seeing the changes on the percentage lines. So first round, down 3 percentage points since Sunday. So that's, since Sunday night. So you can see it's actually dropped a little bit each day until last night when head coach Bill Self announced that Kevin McCullough Jr. will be out for the tournament. So you can see still almost 75% of our bracket challenge game brackets do have Kansas advancing against Samford. You can see that right here that, of course, logically, that means Samford gets up 3 percentage points with that news. So they creeped up a little bit there. They're still our top 13 seed. They already were that before, but now they're definitely kind of increasing their margin there for up there on the top 13 seed line. But here's the thing that I think really stands out even more than just the first round. It's effective what it does further in the ballot down the bracket. So you can see here that Gonzaga has increased by a lot. So you can see hypothetically, if it was a 4 versus 5, it would be number 4 Kansas, number 5 Gonzaga in the second round. So you see on going on Sunday, Kansas was picked by not a huge margin, but more consistently than Gonzaga was in that potential matchup if they got there, or advancing out of that potential matchup, whether it was Kansas, Gonzaga, Kansas McNeese, whatever. So you can see that Kansas has dropped over 8%. So the reason why they're not matching, of course, is you could have someone else winning besides Gonzaga and Kansas that matchup. But those are the two big ones that people kind of anticipate being the showdown in the second round. So Gonzaga is the clear benefactor here with the news with McCullough Jr. out, of course, but you can also argue that Samford is as well, and McNeese. So that's kind of interesting to see how that could potentially go down the road as well. But yeah, those are the big ones here. This is for the percentage of brackets that have teams advancing to the Sweet 16. So still 36.77% of brackets do have Kansas advancing to the Sweet 16, but that's, way down from what we saw late Sunday night when it was almost 45%. That's a huge difference. When you see a lot of people fill out their brackets almost immediately when brackets are out, they're so excited they want to get in right away. So that tells you that even after people complete their brackets, either they're changing their picks or people are, as get more information or more comfortable or more confident in their picks, through going in and locking in or semi-locking in, because brackets don't lock till Thursday. But you can see here right now in real time how that news has really kind of switched a lot in the last few days, especially when you look at just what it was yesterday. You can see Kansas has dropped 3 percentage points just since yesterday for the Sweet 16. Again, out of 100, doesn't seem like a lot percent, but that's still a noticeable decrease considering the news there, which is kind of interesting. Do you want to see how it affects the title percentage picks, Michaela?
Yes, and then I've got a question for you in the comments too. And for those
Oh,
watching,
yeah.
feel free to leave questions in the comments and we'll try to get to them throughout the segment. But let's see how it affects the championship, and then I'll get to that question.
Yeah, so funny enough, Kansas hasn't dropped too much. You can see it dropped a little bit since yesterday, but 0.11 percentage points out of 1.39 is not insignificant. But I think what this also tells you too is the Kansas fans who are picking Kansas, they're loyal, they're not going to drop it. It's probably the non-allied fans of KU or Gonzaga or McNeese or Samford are the ones changing their picks here. So once people who pick Kansas they're sticking with them still. So they're still kind of doing okay on the 4 line. I mean, ahead of Alabama. But you can see the top line, as we saw, continue to see. UConn is a champion on almost 26% of our men's bracket challenge game brackets. Still a huge margin over Houston, North Carolina. Houston, we saw leapfrogged UNC yesterday to become the second most popular pick. They still are. They actually increased their lead a little bit. But again, we're still talking, not huge numbers here. But Houston's getting a little more popular in terms of, being most picked to win a championship. The one flip we did see was Arizona. Arizona today, when I last checked, they flipped back the other way because you can see how close this is. Arizona leapfrogged Kentucky to become kind of the 5th most picked champion this year at almost 6.5% of brackets have Arizona winning the championship. So Kentucky was ahead of all the 2s yesterday. Today they have to settle with being ahead of only 3 of the 2 seeds. So still pretty good for a 3 seed for Kentucky. So again, this isn't Kentucky, getting less popular. Look how similar they were compared to yesterday. It's Arizona getting a slight increase this, today. So again, nothing too dramatic, but anytime you see, teams flip in the order, especially this high, you kind of wonder what the, what the news was there. So again, they were close the whole way through, but you can see Arizona's increased a lot of support since Sunday. Plus nature being the 2 seed, people default to picking the higher seeds. So again, nothing crazy, but just always interesting to see when teams kind of flip places like that.
Yeah, maybe people feeling a little brave early and then being like, I'm going to go with the two
Yeah,
seed.
yeah,
Well,
I'm
here's
guilty
a
of
question
that.
from Jordan who asks about Utah State versus TCU. He said, what are the fans picking on that game, Wayne?
Yeah, that's a good one. So you could see right here of the 8-9s. So TCU is getting picked at almost 57% of our brackets. Utah State, of course, then it was 43.05. So pretty close for an 8-9. We kind of saw this yesterday. The same thing as today. Our 3 closest games are actually still 6-11 games, not 8-9, not 7-10s. So we saw this is still the case again that we saw yesterday. South Carolina, Oregon is even closer than it was yesterday. Not
Yeah.
49.5 to 50.5, but still pretty close. But still, you can see here that Utah State is for an 8 seed, is getting picked a little right than TCU, which is unusual. 9 seeds do have winning record against 8 seeds in the first round since expansion. But again, 8-9, we're talking like very, very close, margins here. So that's how we are right now. You can see TCU is still pretty popular. And again, back to that 6-11, Oregon is the 4th highest upset pick ever that we've seen. The only teams higher than them were picked above 50%. So Oregon is very, very, very popular. Not that NC State and Mexico aren't either, but I think we're seeing again, as we saw yesterday, teams that won a lot of games in a few days to win conference tournaments are getting picked a lot by our bracket challenge players.
Which makes sense. All right, another question. CSBA Highlights asks, what about Charleston as a Cinderella team? We didn't cover the Cinderellas in depth today, so let's get into that. They want to know about Charleston.
Yeah, so here's Charleston. You could see their second most pick 13 seed, but you can see, look at that difference though. I mean, they're about like half of what Samford is. Now, some of that, as we talked about, is probably due to the injuries that Kansas had. Even before yesterday's news about McCullough, there were still questions about how healthy KU was in general. But Charleston is a team. They were very popular upset pick last year as a 12 seed, couldn't get it done, but they're back this year, so they do have a chance to get it done. So you could see a 12.8%, which isn't bad, considering for a 13 seed. And let's see where I can find. Alabama, of course, 87.2 up there up top. So again, that still tells you that that's still pretty popular for 12. Again, 13% of brackets picking a 13 seed. That's not bad. I think sometimes you get thrown out with 100% being confident, but almost 30% is good. It's just not close to what people think about Samford. But again, as we saw last year, FDU was one of the least picked teams, even on the 16 seed line, and won. So much as we like to think that we all know the answers to everything, sometimes we clearly don't know. But Charleston definitely has a chance for a 13 seed upset. We can see if they can get it done, though.
All right, another question. This one from Joe Maxwell. And Stats, I think you're going to like this question. Is St. Mary's being undervalued? An Alabama matchup would be really fun and close.
I think so. I really think so too. I think St. Mary's is one of the team where they could have been, a seed or two higher, depending how things went there. You can see here that St. Mary's is getting picked a little lower than their conference rival Gonzaga in the Sweet 16. But again, some of that probably because of the Stanford news as well. Yeah, I think St. Mary's, they're a team that seems to make it every year. They kind of make teams play to their style, which is always frustrating, I'm sure, for opponents. And so I think St. Mary's seems like a team that if they made a Sweet 16 run or a late 8 run, wouldn't be too shocking to see, especially if the bracket breaks right. You can see here on the 5 seed line, they are the second most popular 5 seed to make the Sweet 16 by 10% over San Diego State, a team that made the title game last year. So, they're still pretty popular. You could see St. Mary's. Yeah, the Gales are always a tough out for sure, especially when they probably could have been even a little higher seed. So, 5 seed, it seems like, they could get the job done.
Well, Stats, any other things you want to point out before we move on?
Yeah, just a couple. So I know we mentioned yesterday kind of how we were the 15 and 16s. Before 2018, I think it would have been easy to just kind of overlook how people were picking those games. Now I feel like that's what you have to talk about. So I have to mention the 15 and 16s. So again, Western Kentucky, even again, not big difference, but more popular than yesterday. So they remain the most picked 15 seed we've seen since we've been tracking these brackets since 2014. So, going back a decade, that's a pretty good number here. Again, 8% or 8.23% of our brackets have Western Kentucky advancing. That's pretty good. And then, St. Peter's dropped a little bit from yesterday, but still one of the highest we've seen on the 15 seed line. I'm sure it's
Yeah.
name people remember from a few years ago, so they're still pretty popular picked. And Longwood moved up against since yesterday. They are our most picked 16 ever. I think everyone wants to get on that bandwagon now before it
Wow.
happens again. Yeah, so we'll see if they can get it done. But I think I'm kind of curious if all ones win this year. I wonder if we'll see numbers drop a little bit next year, that people are just remembering last year's upset and thinking it's going to be more of a pattern. I mean, it has been more a pattern than it was pre 2018 for sure, but we can see if that changes if the one seeds dominate. But shout out to Wagner. They're the lowest picked team, but they just won yesterday, so maybe their fans are a little sleepy and they'll fill in their brackets before brackets lock tomorrow. So shout out to Wagner and Colorado State for getting the job done yesterday and winning on the first four in Dayton. So congratulations. We'll see you guys tomorrow in their games. So we see if they can get the job done.
Any idea or just inkling as to why Longwood is the most popular 16?
I'm not really sure. I think part of the reason is just the matchups. I think Stetson could have been a popular one. They just happened to play the team that everyone thinks is the dominant force in basketball this year. So I think that, yeah, exactly. So I think it might be part of it. But yeah, so the Longwood thing is kind of interesting to me, especially when you would think, Houston, was,
right.
One of the most popular teams. I think this is just maybe it's just the margin sometimes. Again, we're not talking huge percentages here, so I think it's just maybe a little just kind of fun number stuff here. Because you think you probably wouldn't Purdue, knowing how we think about Purdue, the struggles they had and getting upset the previous years. But maybe we'll see tomorrow, once we know where things land on their opponent, maybe that'll change a little bit. But I think that's kind of interesting to see. Maybe once we know who the winner of the playing game is tonight, maybe we'll see kind of reshuffling there a little bit. So don't remember to if you picking a team based off the first four result and the other team won, you still have time to change it, or you can leave it as is. You'll get credit for it. Of course, UCLA made the Final Four from first four a few years back, so you get credit for that. Whether you thought it'd be them or Michigan State winning that game, you get points for it. So don't worry.
And our McNeese, NC State. They still big picks to go far into the tournament, Sweet 16.
Yep. Yeah. So you can see here, New Mexico is still our top double-digit seed pick at almost 20%. Yeah, which is again 20% for a 11 seed. That's really, really high. Part of that's because a lot of people like them against Clemson. I think they can get the job done. Again, another team that looked great in their conference tournament, got the job done. We'll see if they can do it again. But yeah, if you want to go Cinderella all the way to Cinderella, the true Cinderella of winning it all, it's still McNeese, down a little bit since we saw that peak at 1%, but still 0.91 is still very high for a 12 seed going all the way. So all those McNeese fans are sticking with them once they pick them once. They're picking them 5 more times, which is pretty cool.